Ron Laver on Radio Brockley.
Hello and welcome to Brockley News Extra, the programme where you get to hear all the news that is happening in and around the hospital, as well as updates on local events and people who work in the community. I'm Ron Laver, and in today's programme we'll be looking back at the 2014 Trust AGM, and over the next hour we'll be hearing from Trust Chairman Professor Anthony Goldstone and Hospital Chief Executive Officer Rob Hurd, who'll be giving us updates on the redevelopment of the hospital, the current financial background, plus a report on the recent Quality Care Council visit to the hospital. So stay tuned to London's longest running hospital radio station as we keep you updated here on Radio Brockley. So it's a warm September afternoon for this year's annual general meeting of the RNOH Trust. First up at the microphone is Chairman Professor Anthony Goldstone.
Good afternoon and welcome to the annual general meeting. I'm Tony Goldstone, the Chairman of the Trust. Good afternoon. Now, at this stage, the main items of the agenda are to receive the annual report, which hopefully you all have, and to present, mostly by the Chief Executive, Mr. Hurd, the review of the year. This is an apposite moment because the fate of Scotland having been decided now, the country is focusing itself, of course, on general election issues, and as you will have seen in the press in the last couple of days, it is quite clear that, as ever, one of the main core issues that will be discussed by all the political parties is the state of the National Health Service. And that was, of course, emphasised heavily only yesterday at the Labour Party conference, and serves to remind us yet again how important this service is to the whole of the population. Now, one of the things to disabuse the population of, which is not really being attempted at the moment, but which is perfectly clear to the vast majority of the people in this room, is that the NHS is actually not a failure of any kind, but a roaring success. And if you do a proper academic appraisal, such as that seen recently, and I recommend that you Google it, in the report of the Commonwealth Fund, which surprisingly is a US research organisation, not a UK organisation, you will see that in a study that looks at 11 healthcare systems in the so-called advanced Western world, the NHS comes out top in 10 of those 11 categories which relate to access, efficiency, waiting, caring, all the things that our system is looking at on a regular basis now. And of course the problem with the NHS is that it is under-resourced because two major errors were made in the last 3 major errors made in the last 25 years, which are core errors to the problem. The first was that in order to build any new hospital in the last 20 or 30 years, you had to make assumptions that you would need fewer numbers of beds, because that's the only way that you would have passed the money people in order to get that done. Secondly, that nothing was taken into account of the needs of the aging population, of which orthopaedics and dementia are the two most important aspects, and there will be more and more of the older population, happily, for many of us. And thirdly, of course, no proper account was taken of the increase in the population from longevity and immigration. All of these have led to an enormously overstressed system. So a political choice will need to be made of how you deal with that. Now, the reason I say all that is it has to be understood that within all these difficulties, the RNOH is in fact a highly successful organisation which functions at a very high level because of the skills and commitment of its staff, medical, nursing, management, ancillary, every single group of staff. And it is successful because it is managing to increase its workload by 6 or 7% in the amount of work it does every single year in these limited facilities that we have. And unlike 75% of non-foundation trusts, which is what we are at the moment, it works in surplus. I say all this as an introduction because it is not completely obvious when you look at the decrepit campus which we inhabit. And of course, those of you who regularly attend this meeting will know that for many years we have concentrated on the difficulties of the replacement of the fabric of the estate. And that's amongst the things that the Chief Executive will deal with when he speaks to you in a moment. So all the evidence is, and he will go through some of it with you, that this is a successful organisation doing highly skilled and difficult work with excellent outcomes which cannot be matched in the vast majority of places elsewhere. The demand for its services is ever increasing, and despite the fact that we're increasing the amount of work we do by 7% or more a year, we are still on an annual basis turning away a considerable number of patients, maybe another 20 to 25% who would benefit from our specialist services. So the organisation is successful, though struggling in the context of the estate and struggling in the present political climate where clearly more resource is required for the overall service, and in particular, I would suggest, for this institution. So whatever we hear about the difficulties of the NHS, the difficulties of this organisation and the difficulties of the estate, it should be considered a success, and it should be something of which every member of staff here should be very proud. And I myself would be the first to congratulate all of them. Now, I will introduce the Chief Executive, Mr. Hurd, who's going to do an annual review.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, one of the things we've been doing over the last year is as part of our innovation, we introduced an innovation fund within the Trust. And there's a short video I'm going to kick off with in a few moments. But first of all, I was going to just sort of say a few words about the last year. It's been tough. It's been tough. The organisation has kept going like we always do here at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, and delivering, as the chairman says, a staff, a workforce that is delivering fantastic outcomes for patients. One of the milestones we had in although this is a review of 2013-14, what I'll be talking a little bit about is our Care Quality Commission review, which many of you have heard us say a lot about, but I think it's an important milestone in the Trust because there's a lot of good stuff and outstanding stuff in there, and also a lot of warning signs around the estate and the challenges and some of the other challenges that we face. So I thought, though, I would start with the video, just to remind you what we are doing through an Innovation Award. We've got a project which is going to be on our website, a patient guide for those of you who still use the internet, so that you can go in and learn about the hospital as a patient, what we do, what different pathways look like, what different departments do, and really it's part of our, we call it our patient information portal, and we're just going to show you a sample of that, which is the introductory bit from me that then expands on the website into a guide to all the different activities of the hospital. Welcome to the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital. We are an international centre of excellence caring for all types of orthopaedic conditions. Orthopaedics includes conditions relating to bones, muscles, tendons and nerves. The best outcomes for patients occur when they're treated by the right people, the right place, at the right time. The concept of getting it right first time has been pioneered here at RNOH and is becoming a national standard. In some areas, such as complex spinal surgery, we carry out more activity than any other hospital in Europe. In addition, we train more orthopaedic surgeons than anywhere else in Britain. As well as performing all of the standard treatments, such as hip and knee replacement, we also cover a number of very specialist services for conditions such as bone and soft tissue cancers, with some of the world's leading experts on our site. We also have other specialist services, including foot, ankle, shoulders and elbows, as well as peripheral nerve injury, paediatric and pain management units. The London Spinal Cord Injury Centre is one of 11 specialist units in the country. Our rehabilitation programmes are regarded as some of the best in Europe. We are fortunate enough to have access to the Aspire Centre on our site, offering comprehensive rehabilitation and therapy services to patients with spinal injuries. We have been providing these services for over 100 years in Stanmore and also in central London, employing some of the friendliest, highly dedicated and most committed staff in the NHS, who put patient care and safety at the heart of everything they do. We are proud, finally, to be undertaking a major redevelopment of the Stanmore Hospital site. This does, however, mean that for the next few years there will be ongoing building works, which will not affect the excellent care you receive, but may cause some disruption across the site, including road layout and parking. Whilst this is happening, I want to assure you that there will be no charges for parking on the Stanmore site, and we are of course doing our best to reduce the impact that the works will have on your visit. This improvement programme will give us brand new theatres, wards and outpatient facilities, and a state-of-the-art academic centre, which will ensure that we can continue to pioneer world-class clinical care. As part of our improvement programme, we are investing in a series of patient information videos, which we hope will help you understand the RNOH and your involvement as a patient. For more than 100 years, the RNOH has been helping people like you experience an improved quality of life, feel less pain, and enjoy greater mobility. Our future is exciting, and demand for our services is increasing. We continue to be a pioneer and use research and innovation to translate into the best treatment for you, our patient. Okay, I talked about it being a challenging year, but I think it's important to reflect on our achievements. So as the chairman said, in the last year that we are reviewing here today and receiving the annual report, we treated yet again, and I've been saying this every year, more patients than ever before, and last year was a 6% increase in numbers of patients, a 10% increase in our income that we received for those patients. We retained a very impressive infection control track record. If you look at the tables now, we are the only acute hospital trust in this country that has this year, last year we had another year with 0 acquired MRSA. We didn't have 0 C. diff, we brought it down to a run rate of 0. But in this financial year, we're only acute hospital in the country with no hospital-acquired MRSA or C. difficile acquired on the site. So I think that's an indicator. There is much else that we do in infection control, and I think just using those crude headline indicators is not always the best measure of these things, but I think they are very powerful measures of our model of care and the quality of our staff in those facilities. To maintain that record is fantastic. To maintain 18-week access in orthopaedics. So during the course of the last 12 months, I've visited 136 providers of elective orthopaedics around this country. Well over half, 56 to 60% of them, have not been delivering 18-week access in orthopaedics. The hospital as a whole may be doing enough of other activities to mean that the orthopaedics is hidden in the other activities, but for a tertiary centre to be delivering consistently on the 18-week access targets is, again, I think, an impressive testament to the staff of the organisation and the care they've been providing. Referrals growing by 7% a year. So because we have had a number of years in surplus, we have managed to generate capital investment. It is not rebuilding the whole hospital, but it is investing significant sums, more than ever before, in the site. The new children's high dependency unit feels like a long time ago for many of us, but it was in the 2013-14 year where that fantastic facility was opened earlier, formerly in the year by Princess Eugenie. The new MRI scanning suite, that has come in, and other investment in refurbishment, and importantly, slowly but surely, enabling the site year by year with car parking and road infrastructure and other things beneath the ground that you can't always see, but that are preparing for the new buildings of the future on this site. Our friends and family test has remained high, and again, we have been at the forefront of that and piloting it in certain parts of the ahead of the rest of the country, and piloting some of the friends and family collection mechanisms, and consistently reporting high scores on that. And we've done all of that in a very difficult financial climate in the NHS. As the chair says, we've got most hospitals out there in deficit. I've actually understated that, but the formal figure is 5.9 million, so about there's a 2.5 million odd in there, which is a technical gain. So the underlying surplus was the completion of the 1, 2, 3 that some of you may have heard me talk about before. So 3 years ago, £1 million surplus, 2 years ago, £2 million surplus, last year a 3 million underlying surplus, all within as I say, growing every year in the amount of activity we're doing. And so 6 out of the last 7 years have ended in surplus and continued growth. In recognition, as the annual report does, that we by no means claim that everything is perfect here, and we want to do more, and particularly the areas that I would highlight are the estate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Reducing cancer, we know the difficulties that causes patients, and the impact on patient lives of going on their pathway if they're having their operation, if you're having your operation cancelled, and clearly that has to remain. We actually benchmark relatively well, but it's still not good enough. And we want to do more given the activity pressures, that's always put pressure on the system, and there is always a risk of that leading to increased cancellation, so keeping an eye on that. The Care Quality Commission highlighted in their report that we need to be, for a small organisation, we need to do more to learn across the organisation. So they would expect us, our departments in this organisation, to be community learning from incidents, so become a learning organisation. Anything that happens in one department, the lessons are learned and other departments are learning about that. So we talked of a culture of sorting rather than reporting. So in some ways that's good. We're sorting issues out, but we're not necessarily reporting it widely, learning from it across the trust in the way that we should. And I think there is more work to be done on that. Organisational development. We remain an organisation, when the staff survey comes in every year, that staff report high levels of bullying and harassment. There's been a whole programme of activities over the last 2 years, and they continue, and this is a long turnaround process to really work on supporting staff, to really work on the culture and the way in which people behave in going about their daily working activities at the Trust. And that's a major area that we have been focusing on. I remind you, in terms of the estate, that we have the whole support of the system for the fact that the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital will be rebuilt on the Stanmore site. We have the local authority who have given us the planning permission to, which is for the master plan of this site. We have support from our commissioners. We have support from Department of Health. We just always continuously struggle to afford the pace of investment that we need on this site. And the slowness of that, so the master plan is there, the support of the system is there, the pace at which we are delivering that plan is always a challenge for us. Meanwhile, as I say, we invest more and more in the estate than ever before to get it ready for the various phases. And there are various things that have been happening. So I've been trying over the last few months to change the language around the redevelopment of the Stanmore site, and I think people who've worked here for years recognise that there is not going to be a moment in time where a shiny hospital appears and we all move out of all the old buildings overnight and into a new one. This is a long phased development, and much like we've grown over the last 100 years, we will be redeveloping brick by brick for the years to come. We have an immediate 3-year strategy, so we had a refreshed, what's called a 6-facet survey. So decoding that is basically looking at all the aspects of our buildings and estate infrastructure in terms of whether they are legally compliant with standards that we are expected to have in our buildings. And I think we've done a lot of work to make our buildings statutory compliant. Now that means they meet the requirements, but nobody is claiming that those buildings that we are making statutory compliant are actually fit for purpose in terms of their appropriateness, in terms of their design, in terms of the layout, in terms of the interdependencies. So we have been and have set out of that independent 6-facet survey where somebody independently has looked at that, and we have set a capital program that basically has addressed already many of those issues, and certainly in years 2 and 3 next year and the year after will completely address the statutory issues that we are required to comply with. And I think it's important to say that as the CQC would agree, and so it's independently assessed, that safe if not fit for purpose. So everybody recognises that the estate is not fit for purpose, but it is safe. There's no evidence that the estate is in itself causing safety risks to patients. When we do have estate issues, such as last year when we had power failures, and we had 2 major power failures, we changed the activities of the hospital to make sure that we are staying safe during those periods. So we will continue slowly but surely enabling the site. We will continue refurbishing. We do have some actual buildings going up next year, and these are the Princess Eugenie House, which is a charitably funded building you've heard me talk about over the years, which is going to contain the family accommodation. The Sick Children's Trust are paying for a significant element of that. Our charity is paying for a significant element of that as well, and we've had various fundraising events. So those plans are in final consultation phase, and will be that will be going up next year, and that is over the location of the current Graham Hill House. The new UCL Academic Centre. So I think a fairly major thing that has happened over the last year, which maybe is news compared to some of you listening to me talking last year if you were here, is that we've had full UCL Council approval of their investment into replacement of the academic centre here. So again, that is not monies that are within our gift, that is monies that UCL are putting, and that's in order to enable the land sale, which, if you recall, the land sale is a major component of funding for any future development in the Central Development Zone. We need a new academic centre because UCL are occupying some activities at the biomedical engineering and the Western Development Zone, which will be up for sale. And so the approval of that, rather than just cobbling together the old institute building, I think was a major step forward in recognising the RNOH as the centre of the musculoskeletal academic programme across UCL partners. And although we need to take that work forward in collaboration with other hospitals and academic partners across UCL, the fact that we have the Stanmore campus of UCL as a fixed point in the UCL strategy is an important milestone. The new private patient unit. So you will recall that in order to assist with our viability longer term, there is a lot of private patient activity taking place in private hospitals and not at the RNOH in orthopaedics, a lot of which is being done by our consultants because we're not able to offer the facilities on this site to allow that to happen. So we have been out to market formally. We have shortlisted Ramsey, HCA and Spire, who are currently in competitive dialogue on the new private patient unit, which will comprise a hospital of a scale which they determine to be economically viable to them. So we are offering land and brand. We're not determined, and we are saying this is going to be a partnership in which our brand has to be protected, so the quality, there's some protection over the quality of services, but that will be run by the private sector, will be staffed by the private sector, and we will receive an annual premium from the private sector and share of profits, which allow us to invest back into the NHS on our site. And again, that is, as I say, in competitive dialogue, and we will be signing the contract next year to be operational in 2017. The first phase of what used to be called the PFI Phase 1, which earlier in the year we have formally moved away from private finance initiative as the financing route, and we are currently have submitted a business case with a public dividend capital top up to the land sale receipt. So that's basically using public funding, part of which is from the land sale receipt to put up a new ward block and replace imaging facilities and actually have a main entrance, which we currently don't properly have. I think it's fair to say that continues to be a long, hard slog to keep that going. I think it's fair to say that the wider economic climate outlook for the NHS means that that will continue to be. We have the position at the moment is we've sent off the nth iteration of the business case to the Trust Development Authority, and we're working with them over the autumn to see how we keep that moving forward as quickly as we possibly can. But as I said before, all stakeholders are signed up to there being no alternative but the redevelopment of the Stanmore site. So an important part of obviously the year, what the CQC say about us and what we need to be developing in terms of our organisational development strategy and listening to our staff. And clearly there is a lot of pride in what we do here, and so there should be, considering the remarkable work that takes place in this organisation. And it is very pleasing to see that people who work here would recommend us as a place to work or receive treatment. We're recently in the Health Service Journal, top 100 employers in the health service. But we recognise that we have more to do. And we recognise that listening to our staff is something we need to work harder at, and we need to move from just communicating to actually engaging and listening and responding to concerns. And we recently have launched things like the Staff Champions Initiative, and we are working hard with senior clinicians and managers in really setting the standards of behaviour from the top of the organisation. So yes, there's the figures. 3.69 out of 5, which is a good score. Would say staff satisfaction has increased, and 4.07 out of 5 as a recommended place to work or receive treatment. However, 34% work-related stress, and also some of our worst scores around bullying and harassment. So we are not proud that 26% of our staff reported bullying and harassment, and we did not score well on equal opportunities for career progression. A shocking score of 3% of our staff experiencing physical violence from colleagues, and 15% of staff discrimination at work, and fairness and effectiveness of incident reporting did not score high. I highlight those because I set them in contrast to the amazing achievements of this organisation, and I say as Chief Executive that we are taking those bottom scores very seriously. We are not proud, and our major organisational development programme needs to see some improvement in what our staff are saying about us in those areas.
You're listening to Radio Brockley, Brockley News Extra, the programme where you get to hear all the news that is happening in and around the hospital, as well as updates on local events and people who work in the community. Today's programme, we're covering the 2014 Annual General Meeting of the RNOH Trust, and now it's time once again to hear from Chief Executive Rob Hurd as he looks forward to the future.
So I'll now reflect back on some of our priorities going forward, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, the Care Quality Commission came along in May, and 35 people were here for 4 days. Probably a higher proportion of person per unit of activity or beds in any hospital in the land. We had a lot of work up prior to that. We put ourselves forward for this. We were a trust that wanted to be inspected as a pilot specialist trust to test the CQC model. We did it fundamentally, our stated aim was because we thought we should come out with a good rating overall, which would allow us to continue at pace with our foundation trust and redevelopment journey. And fundamentally, we didn't achieve that goal to be a bottom line good overall rating. However, I think when one reads the report, when one compares it with other hospitals, there is very much to be proud of in what the CQC found. And to get, it's not just more outstanding ratings than any other trust, but 3 times the number of outstanding ratings than any other trust. To get some of the comments that are in the detail of that report, commending the care of our staff for the patients, commending the effectiveness of outcomes and us demonstrating the good outcomes that we get for our staff. There is, as I say, much to be proud of and much that we should be promoting. Now, on the other hand, there are improvements required, and there's a difficult balance that the CQC have to strike here in judging what is requiring improvement, what is good and what is outstanding. And as I've said to many of the staff in briefing back on this and others elsewhere, we will not ever be an outstanding trust with the estate that we have. So number 1 on the list is until we've rebuilt this hospital, and in particular the CQC would highlight the children's facilities in this hospital as a key inadequacy of this organisation, its remoteness, its size, its scale, and the journey that the children have to take from the children's unit to theatres and various other aspects of that facility. We will not be an outstanding hospital until we rebuild. So we will not be an outstanding hospital for a number of years as we are setting out our plans for redeveloping the site, which are not going to be completed for a number of years. However, there are aspects of things which we were working on, we knew about, but the CQC have brought into focus and have led to, particularly in the areas of safety, on filling out WHO checklists in operating theatres, our risk management mechanisms in terms of, I talked earlier about learning from incidents, but basically the whole water board governance, when things go wrong, how they're reported, do we know they're fixed, how are they shared, and the basic infrastructure of a risk management system, which I would recognise is still in development in this organisation and we're making progress in, but we need to continue to develop. I've talked about organisational development, children's services and improvement in numbers of safeguarding children training levels, as well as the facilities issues. These are some of the edited highlights. The report is available online. All I would say, most generally, is obviously this hit the organisation hard, and I think there are many staff in the room here today that we felt that, you know, when the pen was wavering between requiring improvement and good, I think all of us took a hit there. And I think what I would say to you is read the report, read what it says about the outstanding stuff we do. When I talk to the CQC and the Chief Inspector of Hospitals tells me he knows where he would have his hip replacement done in Stanmore, and when I speak to the lead inspector of the hospital team who repeatedly convinces me that we are actually a good hospital and we should be very proud of what goes on here, that we shouldn't be so sensitive about the requires improvement. Notwithstanding any of that, we have to work on these areas. We hope they'll be back before Christmas. We have to decide whether that's the best time for them to come back, because we don't want them to come back and we don't get the right result next time, because they won't be back for quite a while after that. So we've got to decide when we want them back for an unannounced inspection to give us that good rating, so that we can really truly reflect what we believe this organisation is, which is fundamentally a outstanding hospital with an estate problem that will become therefore can only ever be a good hospital until it is rebuilt. So we have to strengthen, embed good, robust safeguarding practices. These are some of our quality priorities as stated in the quality accounts that are before you, as well as the annual report, to implement the 6 C's of the nursing strategy and to strengthen senior nursing leadership are all part of our quality improvement plans. So in terms of the other questions, I've talked a bit about the slowly but surely rebuilding the Stanmore site. which is a bit of a change of pace from where I was last year. And the CQC knocking us back, but lots of positive things there, and we require them to come back and give us a good rating if we are to continue a Foundation Trust application. And I think that would, having got through that, having been through the autumn, working with the Trust Development Authority on our redevelopment plans, to be relaunching that next year with a clearer picture of how that all unfolds, will emerge out of that. The financial climate in terms of the long-term financial outlook is a key factor in all of this as well. There aren't many non-foundation trusts out there who can get to foundation trust status. So although we have our particular issues, and this isn't perhaps quite as positive as I was last year about foundation trust, I think we would struggle to find many trusts in the current environment who can get over the line to foundation trust status, and indeed we would find many foundation trusts in some difficulties in dealing with that environment ahead. We'll continue to be the UK's National Reference Centre. Nothing we have said will change that. Nothing we have said moves us away from a rebuild at Stanmore and moving forward with all the plans that we've set out to do. I think we would recognise in putting the annual report before you here today and the quality accounts that we've continued to provide an excellent service to patients. We've continued to grow as an organisation, that we've delivered the core targets and standards that are expected of us in headline terms, but we've been knocked back by an inspection report that we are addressing the issues in and really going to show the world that a National Centre of Excellence can do better than requires improvement, and we are a good hospital that will be outstanding when we have rebuilt it. Thank you very much.
We now come to the question and answers section, where the Chief Executive and myself will attempt to answer questions from the floor in relation to the RNOH and its year. Please feel free to ask what you wish, and most of the time you'll get a straight answer. Let me start then by myself asking the Chief Executive, how are we going to be able to produce a surplus at all in by the end of this financial year if things are so financially difficult in the health service? How's it going to be achieved this time?
Well, the only answer to that is through hard work, and I think the positive side to our model and what we do for our patients is we have the potential to do activity, to open a new day unit, to have another theatre, to have investment in infrastructure from the surpluses that we've delivered before, to basically stay ahead of the game in terms of the work that we're doing. We get paid for the work that we do. We have to continue to work hard at making sure that the rate we get paid for the work that we do is appropriate. And indeed, whilst there are major challenges with that, because we get paid at average rates and we do more complex work than the average, the potential upside of that in the future, the benefit of that in the future, is that the more we can get more recognition of the complexity of the work that we can do, the more gains we can potentially make in getting. So historically we've been underfunded. In the future we can gain more funding from appropriate reimbursement for complex activity. I think the reason we're talking about things like private patients having a new unit on the site, the academic centre generating academic activities, teaching activities on the sites, undergraduates coming back to the site, activity equals money. Anything that we're doing, teaching, researching, clinical activity, we need to grow as an organisation. So it's hard work, but it's more hard work, and it's doing the good work and carrying on the good work that we do here. We also have the advantage that a local hospital struggling in its in the NHS economic climate, we don't rely on one local health economy. We have patients from all over the country, so we have less reliance on individual one health authority clinical commissioning group who may be in individual financial difficulties. On the other hand, our major commissioner is NHS England, the specialist commissioner that purchases a large proportion of our work, and they, like everybody, have significant financial challenges. So it's not going to be easy. At the moment, we're holding on more than a lot of other people, and it'll get harder every month that goes by. But those will be the things that I've described will be the reasons we get there or we don't.
Okay. The latest theme the politicians have hit upon is, of course, the 7-day working week in healthcare. This is the great challenge from those who don't have to do it to those who do have to do it. What are we doing here about that, and what's appropriate, and where have we got to?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say on that is that there are many activities that already take place 7 days a week at the RNOH. Going back to my trip around the country that I referred to earlier, I think we're doing probably more elective surgery on a Saturday in this trust than many of the hospitals around the country. However, a Saturday and Sunday is not the same as a Monday and Tuesday in this organisation, and we, like all NHS organisations, are going through the process of planning for a future in which a more resilient 7-day service, more activity at weekend, more medical cover, more ward rounds, more pharmacy availability, more allied health professional availability. We're having to assess that now. The government's challenge is a difficult one. Work 7 days a week, but it can't cost us any more money. That's a very difficult challenge that we face in the health service. But we are joining up with the process for planning for that, and looking at all our activities at the weekend, and indeed going back to your previous question about how we'll survive, well, keeping activity flowing through the organisation throughout the week is going to be one of the things we're going to be having to do.
A questioner from the floor then asked how they were planning to disseminate the positive information contained in the CQC report.
At the moment, we've been focused on getting the other areas right rather than cascading the excellent practice that we have. I mean, a couple of examples of things that we are doing in terms of, I talked about the UCL leading the academic world, but also in terms of the Getting It Right First Time project in orthopaedics, where these visits that we've been doing and the attributes of what good looks like in orthopaedics, defining that. And indeed, the CQC used that analysis in going in and inspecting other hospitals of measures of outcomes in orthopaedics. But I'm sure there's more we can do to promote the outstanding stuff to the outside world. At the moment, the immediate aftermath has been focusing on doing the things we need to do internally, but I'm sure we can move on to that next phase. As I said, there's a lot to be proud of in that report, and a lot of outstanding ratings in areas that no other trust is achieving outstanding ratings.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
It seems to me that you need a lot of money, and £5 million or £12 million doesn't seem to be a great deal of cash for the sort of development which is taking place here. Is there not the possibility that the government should be providing hospitals like this with low interest rate loans through a business development bank?
I don't need to remind you that the PFI is coming to the end of its useful life, if it had one, that the major sources of funding are very difficult. There's a considerable amount of land here, some of which we are preparing to sell for housing, but the amount of that which is usefully available is limited by issues of the Green Belt and the legislation in relation to that. There's potentially considerable income from the private practice, which is very common and very prevalent in orthopaedics, the vast majority of which is done by our own staff at a private hospital not a mile from here, which doesn't benefit the hospital. And of course, the government expects you to, as we are doing, go forward with incremental, modest amounts of investment from surplus if you can produce it on your income. Well, the income for procedures is restricted to a well-defined tariff which is meant to cover the cost of that procedure, rather than produce a profit to build new buildings. So the whole thing is complex and is difficult, and one of the alternatives is to keep using small surpluses to do everything incrementally, or to find a different way, and PDC may be one of those ways, to get a large slug of capital at the same time. But in fact, anything better, and almost anything is better, would cost considerably more to run on a daily and a weekly basis than the facilities we've got now. So there's nothing in the whole of government policy which actually directly covers the predicament in which we found ourselves, and we have to be extremely innovative, resourceful, and constantly thinking of new ways to do things. One of the things I might say to the Chief Executive is we succeed because we successfully grow 6 or 7% per annum, but for how many more years can we do that? Most of the successful PFIs that there have been are predicated on the fact that by chance many of these trusts have estate or land which is much more saleable, and the disposal of which can be used to provide the new facility. So the Middlesex Hospital actually was the provision of the building of the new University College Hospital. They're no more clever at their finances than we are here, but unfortunately we haven't got the Middlesex Hospital at the bottom of Brockley Hill. That's the problem.
What's the RNOH doing to ensure that the quality and quantity of food is acceptable to patients, particularly those who are long stay?
Director of Nursing.
I think from our patient feedback and our friends and family, we do not get a lot of complaints about the food, and the complaints that we have had, we've addressed them, maybe that they've been cold, not been served on time. Obviously the new guidance will have to make sure that we're in line with the new guidance and to follow what recommendations to make.
I think we would say two extra things. First of all, one of the things the non-executive directors do in this trust is actually go round the wards, as do our own patient group, interrogating, that's the wrong word, chatting to patients about the food and bringing it back directly to the board. So it's not filtered out anywhere below the board. So the board is made completely aware of that. The second thing to say is, of course, there are many patients in this hospital who need to be here on a pretty long stay. And that's a problem for any kind of catering, whether you're staying in a hotel or a hospital, that in fact you go through the same repertoire time after time after time, and that does present difficulties, we admit that. Okay, I'll just take the opportunity to thank you all for coming, to thank our volunteers for the audio-visual facilities, and to thank all the staff who've had an excellent year, and all the volunteers who have helped us, without whom we would not be in the partially happy position we find ourselves, the functionally happy position in which we find ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Following the meeting, Keith Reeve caught up with Chief Exec Rob Hurd. But before that, I managed to speak to one of the other people that had been presenting during the day, Leanne Cheney. Leanne, can you tell me what your job title is here?
So I've been the Learning and Development Manager here for the last 5 years.
And what does that involve?
That involves a whole range, all training and development basically for all of our staff. So we offer a huge amount of personal and professional development, career development, vocational training, mandatory training to make sure people is working safely, and also apprenticeship programs, so employing people into entry-level roles, training them up to be future professionals.
Okay, tell me a bit more about the apprenticeship program. Where do you get people for that from?
So we've worked with local colleges, schools and the local job centre to get people that are starting off in their career that need an opportunity, that are keen and motivated and want to get involved, and we take them with those values and train them up in the skills that they need.
Okay, and have you had any real success stories recently?
Yeah, absolutely. One of our apprentices, who was employed in 2010, he is about to hand in his dissertation for his master's degree. When we found him, he had a huge amount of potential, but he couldn't get a break. He was working in a pizza restaurant, applying for jobs. Nobody would give him an opportunity for the kind of jobs that he wanted. And now he's just, as I said, completing his master's degree, and he's received a promotion to a senior HR advisor, so he's very happy.
So the training and development work you do for the staff that are already here, now that's not medical training, is it?
Well, we do medical training, but it's not something that I've managed. The things that I looked at mainly was the nursing, clinical and non-qualified staff. So, for example, for all of our HCAs, we encourage them to train to a level 3 diploma, which is A-level equivalent. So if they're keen and they want to develop, then those opportunities are there to be the best they can be, which is investing in our staff, but also ensuring that our patient safety and care is the highest level possible.
Right, and that's very important these days, of course.
Absolutely, and hopefully our patients see that in the services that are being provided.
So if patients are listening to this and they've got friends or family or even themselves that might be interested in getting into a career in hospitals, should they contact you?
Well, what they need to do, if they're looking for vacancies, there's 2 places they can go to. One is NHS Jobs, if they're looking for roles in the RNOH or any other NHS organisation. If they're looking for apprenticeships, they should look at the apprenticeships vacancy website, the National Apprenticeship Service. We will advertise all of our opportunities on there, and also all opportunities across the whole NHS, no matter where they live, will be advertised on there as well.
Okay, thanks for your time, Leanne. Thank you.
Well, I'm with Rob Hurd once again after another RNOH AGM 2014 this time.
Absolutely.
How's the last year gone, Rob?
Well, for starters, thank you as always to you and Keith and Radio Brockley more generally for your support for the hospital.
It's a pleasure.
I mean, as I said in my presentation, it's been a positive but challenging year. You know, the wider health service environment, the ever-increasing demand on services, maintaining the high quality of care that we do here at the same time as keeping the rebuild programme going forward. We've got a lot on our plate here at RNOH, and as I said in my presentation, the staff do an amazing job keeping it going, doing the outstanding stuff they do, and that's not just me saying it, that's people like the Care Quality Commission recognising the outstanding care, the outstanding outcomes that we get for patients. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, yes, we delivered a financial surplus, which many other trusts have struggled with, and we're still okay at the moment. But the pace at which we can keep those new buildings coming forward is a constant challenge. We've got some projects that I described that are happening: the Princess Eugenie House, the new academic centre, the private patient hospital, the NHS ward block remains sort of tentatively poised on. We've got it ready to go, but signing on the dotted line always still feels a little way off, but we're doing the work on the site to get ready for that, the roads, the car parking, the drainage, the statutory compliance issues I talked about. So we're going to have a site that's ready, we're going to have staff that are doing a fantastic job ready to work in it, and we'll gradually give them the buildings they deserve over the years to come, I hope.
Great. 18 months or so ago, when you last spoke to us on Radio Brockley, you mentioned, I think the term was that all the ducks were in a row, perhaps for the first time ever. Do you still feel that's the case?
I think so. I think the ducks in a row for, there is no question about Stanmore is where the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital is going to provide specialist orthopaedic services. There's no doubt about that question, and over the years in the past there have been. There's definite progress in terms of real things happening, and the support of the wider system and our performance. We have to be performing, we have to be doing our bit, showing that we can deliver good things for patients, stay on top of our finances, and have the support of the system. Those ducks remain in a row. I think my language that I'm using this year is that it's still hard keeping it all going. Doesn't mean there's any alternative. Does mean that the months that we continue to work in the 4 facilities that we have, maybe they'll be replaced bit by bit rather than in one. It certainly won't be one big bang new hospital that we all move into overnight. So we've got to set realistic expectations. Now things may change as we go through the years, and the economic climate may change. Funding to the health service, etc., may ease that up. But it does feel a difficult time for the health service generally in the current climate.
Finally, Foundation Trust status. I think one of the key things from the CQC inspection was the hope we get a good or outstanding to be able to push that forward. As we didn't get that, how does that affect our aspirations to become a foundation trust?
Well, in theory, it doesn't at all. In practice, it was a blow, as I said in my presentation today. That we invited them in. We were thinking, right, we're great hospital. We'll come out with what we need, and we'll move on. Some of the things they found, they want to come back and have another look before we can then move on. So it has added that extra stage. In theory, if they're back before Christmas and we carry on, we'll get what we need from them, still within the time scale we need it to happen. So it doesn't necessarily have to delay it, but it's not the sort of what we would have liked to have ticked that box, moved on to keeping the next thing going. So I think that the more fundamental question is really the pace at which we keep the rebuild going forward during the course of the next few months and next year, and that's the basis for assuring the CQC and Monitor and others that we've got a sustainable plan for our services here, including the estate.
Rob Hurd, thank you very much, and look after yourself, and do take a rest, because I know that at times when I see you look absolutely frazzled. You had a cold the other day, and
Well, we keep going, and it's important that we do, Keith, and I think there's a lot of people who put a lot into this organisation, and I owe it to them to try and keep the whole thing going forward, so I'm committed to the cause.
And if you'd like to see a full copy of the annual report, you can do so by dropping an email to communications@rnoh.nhs.uk. And if you're interested in finding out more about the CQC report, you can go to the RNOH website at www.rnoh.nhs.uk. Don't forget you can hear a brand new edition of Brockley News every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. and listen to extended repeats every day at lunchtime between 12 and 1. My name's Ron Laver. You've been listening to Brockley News Extra from Radio Brockley.